Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, as I see in the chat. Chris Ann Kerr here with the Common Ground Alliance. We're giving it a little bit of time here as we're expecting a big crowd today for CGA's new series, Food for Thought, sponsored by our friends, Earth Solutions, partnership with TerraSound Technology. Great turnout for today's event, and I see obviously not everybody's first Zoom meeting. You're already in the chat, and let us know where you're from. It's great to see virtually so many folks, as I know that we are all anxiously looking forward to a return to in-person meeting, and we're happy to report that the 2021 CGA Conference and Expo will be in person this October 12th through the 15th in sunny Orlando, Florida at the Orlando Renaissance SeaWorld, and we hope to see you all there. First of all, just a couple ground rules for the webinar today. Please feel free to use the Q&A and chat features as you are all on mute. At the end, you can also have the ability to raise your hand, and we can unmute you to ask the question verbally. You'll find this function in your webinar control panel, and that's typically at the bottom of your screen. We have more than 200 attendees for today's presentation, and I know we're all very anxious to learn what Earth Solutions has to share with us today. So please be cognizant, we may not get to everyone's question, but we will keep a copy of this chat log and provide it to the appropriate folks here to make sure we get all of your questions answered. So feel free to use that chat log, knowing that we may not have time for all the verbal ones at the end. So I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us for lunch. We're pleased to have CGA's longtime corporate member and great partner and friend in damage prevention here with us today. And without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Trent and Craig to walk us through today's Lunch and Learn. Gentlemen.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris Ann, and thank you, CGA. As Chris Ann said, we're excited to announce our partnership with TerraSound. It's very exciting. We want to walk you through the process, but we think it's it focuses on those areas that are most challenging to the industry. And we welcome all questions, and we'll have a good, hopefully 15 minutes at the end. So please submit those. We're happy to answer them. If we can't answer them during the session, we're happy to have one-on-one calls as well. But from agenda perspective, we really want to talk about the industry challenges and how we're attacking that for the industry and the benefits with that. So without further ado, we'll just kind of walk through that. We also want to do a good, solid presentation of the software and the solution and the combined solutions, and really help you understand how we're attacking your critical infrastructure needs, how we're doing the damage prevention needs, and beyond. So I'll be presenting, Trent Pugh, President and Chief Revenue Officer. And then to my right here is Craig. He's our CEO of TerraSound. A quick introduction from a company standpoint. Most of you know Earth Solutions from damage prevention, but we really are focused on helping customers with preventing damages, mitigating risk around your critical network infrastructure. Ultimately, how do we protect that, drive safety, drive compliance? And that's from not just your asset, your people, the community. And we know, and as well as you folks, obviously being the boots on the ground, as well as the bills that are going out, the infrastructure that's happening. So what we're really looking to do is how do we support your endeavors? How do we help you protect? How do we help you reach those compliance and exceed it? So we're really excited about what TerraSound brings to the table, and how we partner with them to provide all those critical infrastructure protections that you guys need. So Craig, if you want to talk a little bit about TerraSound, I think it'd be great.
Sure. Thanks, Trent, and happy to be talking to everybody at CGA about this as well. A little bit about TerraSound. Probably a lot of you haven't heard of us in the past. But our vision is basically to provide reliable sensing solutions to secure, protect, and predict an inconsistent world. Basically, what we're doing is taking a new or existing fiber optic cable. We make a centralized box, and then we also produce an intelligent monitoring software that can detect energy and the pattern of energy that's going into the ground, and that allows us to kind of see what's going on around us, and we can then utilize our software to flag any types of events that may be interesting or hazardous to the customers that we have. And then as we're detecting it, pairing this with Utilisphere obviously allows us to send a lot of alerts out to people, and it also can filter through all the existing 811 dig tickets to make sure, hey, was this something that was planned, or is this something that's unplanned, and what level of threat is it? So it offers an entirely another level of integration for the customer. So really excited about this partnership.
Thanks, Greg. So we're going to get right to it. These are numbers, and again, these aren't to the decimal point, Chris Ann, but really the area that we're focused on, at least on the initial launch, and then we'll talk about all the other capabilities that the solution provides. But we know that 30% approximately, I think it's 28 to 29%, comes as a result of people not calling it a dig ticket. CGA and 811, the campaigns have been fantastic to get the word out and continues to increase. But with the infrastructure growth, the bills that are coming out, I think it's more important than ever to really understand the problems that we're trying to solve. So a quick little background is TerraSound is actually about 3 miles from Earth Solutions, which was very convenient. But really, we were on a mission is how do we help protect, especially starting with the areas that people are not calling in excavations. How can we solve that problem? It's a big problem. It's a big challenge. And that's the area that we focus on. And as Craig had said, we'll get into the demonstration, but laying that fiber and having that detection to tell things like excavation, somebody hand digging, and all kinds of other activities is really going to change the game for the industry. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is impact you all in a positive way to understand what's happening on your asset. And Craig's right? So planned events, Utilisphere does an amazing job, and many other systems out there of, I've got a ticket, I got to go out, mark and locate it. And it's planned and everything goes perfectly. Everybody's happy and there's no outages, no damages, no misdigs. But as we all know, right, unplanned events happen all the time. And we're going to get into some real detail of what those unplanned events are. Here's just a few examples, and we'll spend some time on the demonstration of what those are and how we capture those. But I'd like to focus on the top left here is no 811 ticket. The technology that, again, that they're bringing to the forefront is security breaches. We'll talk about cutting a fence, climbing a fence, hand digging, all those challenges that the industry's faced with of how do we detect these? How do we protect the public? How do we protect community? This combined solution really helps us give that purview, and more importantly, allows you guys to take action to prevent these types of things happening immediately and in the future. And we'll cover most of these in some of the demonstration. So, ultimately, you can't plan for what you don't know. That's ultimately what we're trying to solve here. So with the combined solutions, right, you think about, I've got all my planned events, and we'll stick to ticket management for a second. We're working with a customer right now, and their use case was, I went out, I did the proper mark and locate. We're installing the solution here where they have detection of anything that's happening on and around that asset. So they did what they're supposed to do, and it was planned. over time, so they went out and did the mark and locate, and then it was actually in a farmer's field. And over time, that farmer kept getting closer and closer to their facility, and then they ended up cutting that facility, which was a telecommunication, and it took out several of their high usage clients, right, for several hours. Had we had this solution involved, right, they can see how close that's getting. We'll show you in the video and the demonstration of how they do that, but it's that planned event ended up becoming an unplanned event, right? Those things happen all the time. A tree falls on a right of way, a landslide happens. With this technology, you will not only have that real-time visibility, but you also, in many cases, be able to predict that that thing's happening. So when we talk about natural events, weather, those types of things, vegetation management, all those things we'll be able to detect. And then you'll have that purview, not just at the immediate, but you also have the life of the asset of what happened on and around, what time did it happen, what was the result, what was the data collected around it. So that's the area that we're really trying to solve. So from a high level, we're basically merging planned events and unplanned events to help protect those facilities that are critical to our infrastructure. Craig, you want to talk a little bit more about, I think it would be helpful for them to understand where it originated,
Sure.
how it was used, and then we can talk more about what we're planning to do with it.
Yeah, sure. So a bit more background on TerraSound, and I'll get into a little bit of how it works. But my brother founded the company. He was in the military for a long time. The last couple of tours that he did, he was attached to one of the national labs, and they were working on counter IED solutions. They came up with this distributed acoustic sensing. My brother was sent over to Afghanistan to deploy this along the roads. So he installed many systems there, and basically what they could do is kind of see where people would come from. If they stopped and started digging into the road, that was a red flag, and then where they went to after that. And then they could go out and proactively know where it was or where they had done something and look for an IED device and safely detonate it before any problems happen. So while he was out there, he was thinking of commercial uses for this, did some research, noticed that nobody was doing this really in the US, and started TerraSound. So that's kind of our roots. Basically what or how TerraSound works is there's a buried fiber optic line. Our interrogator box is shooting a laser down that line. And then we're detecting energy, amount of energy and pattern. When energy goes into the ground, and you wouldn't think that walking puts a whole lot of energy into the ground, but it does. Even walking at 100 feet will send tiny vibrations into the fiber optic cable. The laser then with backscatter can measure how large that event was and the pattern of that. We're then using machine learning and algorithms in the background that's looking at the pattern and saying, okay, this is a human walking or this is a vehicle driving. And that allows us to classify what those different events are that are happening up in real time.
Perfect. And we're going to go over some use cases here.
Yeah, so what can we detect? The honest answer is we can detect just about anything. We have set classifiers now for the things as you can see here on your screen. So humans walking, and we can tell the difference between a human and an animal. If you have fence lines, we can see somebody climbing it, cutting it, jumping over it. We've got the potential to be detecting gunshots. From a digging perspective, hand digging, line tapping, drilling, a whole slew of different vehicles, heavy equipment and excavating. And then we can also see natural disaster types of events, earthquakes or something like that. So this is kind of what we have classifiers for available now. But if there's kind of customer specific things that you're interested in, you can talk to us and we can see if we can see those things as well.
Yeah, I think, we're already in the early stages of this. We're already having additional conversations, right? One of our joint customers now is coming back and saying, hey, since we've already got the fiber in the ground, can you have it turn the valve, right? Because they have to do that every X amount of months, right?
Yeah, that's right. Once you have a fiber optic in the ground, we only use one dark fiber. Generally speaking, there's a bunch of different fiber lines. When you're installing one, there's 8 or 10, 24, depending on what they put in. So the capability is there for you to use the other dark fibers for communications lines, for controlling valves, for sending data, SCADA data down the lines. So
we initially, some of the areas that we're rolling out already is, you think about all the different utilities, right? You got oil and gas and their transmission lines, or high consequence areas. And we've got here, right, there's operational issues and environmental issues. You can read those. So we've got substations, transmission lines, high consequence areas. One of the customers we're working with, they're really concerned about the ones that are monitored by TSA, Homeland Security, right? How do we know what's going on and around those facilities at all time? We can monitor secure areas, and I think that's where you guys have really started making good inroads of what areas, what buildings do you need to protect? And we'll show you, I think one of the videos might, if it doesn't have it in there, but you think about even a chain link fence, right? You can run a fiber in that top conduit at the top, right? And they can do all their algorithms and sensing off of that. And that's really important. One thing that we don't have in the video that we're about to show you here in a second, we can integrate to drones, we can integrate to your cameras. And we all know the challenges, right? If you've got several miles and hundreds of miles of facilities, you're not going to put a bunch of cameras and drones, but we can tie this technology into that and kick those off. We can show a little bit of a piece of that. I see you popped up, Chris Sam. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. We got a couple good ones here that seem quite timely. And because this is incredibly out of my wheelhouse, could this be used for bank security in order to detect tunnels like geophones?
So yes, tunneling is one of the use cases for this technology. In fact, we're on both the northern and southern border, and that is one of the cases for this is to see and detect where tunnels are being dug.
Great. And then one more quick question before we move on here. Is TerraSound using existing fiber networks, or is it all custom installed fiber around a specific customer's infrastructure?
So we can use either. So one of our use cases is smart cities, and we are on, for example, in Ohio, US 33. It's a smart road. We're using their existing fiber that they laid. It's 30 feet off the road. It's not ideal, but we can still see very well onto the road. Or we can install new fiber if that fiber is not existing, and do it that way. So long as it's single mode fiber that's in the ground, which is the general fiber used for telecommunications, we can use that.
Great. And I'm going to go back to Dark. Francisco, I see your question, and I'll save it to the end of the Q&A and carry on, gentlemen. Thank you.
No, that's great. And I want to add on to that. So it's a pertinent, just as an additional use case, right? So back to the city you guys are performing for, you can detect potholes, right, over time, right, of how deep they're getting, how much traffic is on that pothole. So Craig's right, the use cases are endless, and we're going to talk about how do we track that and how do we create additional use cases and algorithms in their case to really sense those going forward. So I'm going to walk you through real quick how the two solutions integrate together. Ultimately, as you're learning, the fiber is going to be on are around your asset. And then the TerraSound technology is installed along with that. And that's what's actually picking up based off of their algorithms. They're sending that information to Utilisphere. And then this is the also additional benefits that I want to make sure we point out is once that data is collected, which is absolutely essential, right? It's automatically dispatched and routed and notified to the right individual. So with integrating the two solutions, we get the information and the event that's happening. And based off of that event, we can configure inside of your system, which actually is a configurable setting inside of Utilisphere, so it doesn't require any kind of development. You can set up who gets notified, who gets dispatched. It can be by geographical, it can be by event type. And really what you're establishing there is a complete history of what happened around that asset. And so when you get audited or you have different events happen, and that's one thing we're going to discuss here too, is we have use cases that we have immediately available, but as you continue to look at the site, so let's say we didn't have an algorithm and you said, hey, this event happened at 5 o'clock on Thursday. We keep that information and you could come back and say, this is what happened. And now we can create an algorithm that catches that going forward. So when Craig's saying we can do this, there's really endless use cases. That's how this is going to work, is you're going to have a complete feedback mechanism. So you could go into the software and say, hey, at this time, this event happened. Now we can go back, look at that, and now we can tag that for future use. So it's really important to get that event, but then it's what are you going to do with it? How are you going to react? And then the other huge piece that pertains to this audience and the CGA, there are planned events, right? So what we've done is we've tied the two systems together. When that event comes, if there's an 811 ticket in the vicinity, it's going to automatically attach that to that event, right? So when the tech gets it or the dispatcher, they're going to see screen, which I'll show you here in a second, and it'll tell you, here's the event, here's the big requests that are in that area, and then you can see which ones potentially are closed, which ones are open. Obviously, there's a lot of capabilities there. When were they supposed to dig? Are they digging at the proper time? So there's a lot of use cases there to make sure that the proper work is being performed at the proper time. But tying those together, because you don't want to roll trucks, you don't want to dispatch people if there's legitimate work going on that's supposed to happen in there. And we'll show you what that looks like. Ultimately, hopefully this is resonating, right? We want to protect your people, your community, your assets. We want to give you a look back, right? So that you can react now, you can react in the future, but it's ultimately how do we protect, from top down, people, assets, community. So we're gonna play a video here. I'm going to pause it once we get up here just to give you a little bit of insight. So before we start, so this is, I've been out to the site. So this is TerraSound's actual test site. So what you can see here, hopefully you can see these to the left, I'm pointing to it. They've run fiber through the ground, they run it through a bridge, they ran it through a small little creek. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions of, can it run through conduit? What can it run through? The answer is about anything. We just have to set up some testing here to calibrate, if that's the right word, right? Of what we need to sense. So this test site is where we do a lot of what else do we need to test for? What else can we can do? By the way, this little gray, I think, is a piece of the wall. Was that from the wall?
Oh, that's on the far side there. That's the kind of a demonstration building, if you will.
So they got a piece of the wall from the border
wall,
right?
Yeah.
You can run it through the concrete, you can run it through the fence, who's climbing, who's trying to tear it down, those types of things. But we're showing you a little bit behind the scenes of what's being monitored. You wouldn't necessarily see this, but it's helpful to see what we can detect. So up in the right-hand corner, oops, I'm trying to move this. You can see what's detecting. right? So this is a human, and as Craig had alluded to, is it's not a big, heavy footprint, but it really doesn't matter to us, right? We're telling you what's happening. And now a vehicle is running, and you can see it's getting much more heavy, but we're already telling you what's going to happen. So as these things are happening, it's integrating with our software and showing and creating those alerts so you can dispatch people, and perhaps this is okay. Maybe you expect there's some light traffic, whether it's foot, whether it's vehicle. But these are the use cases that we mentioned before, and we just want to show you like the patterns, how we're detecting that. This guy's hand digging. Immediately we're popping up excavation, right? And then they're digging. Those things are going to be automatically dispatched so that you're aware of them. And again, in our software, you're going to see here, if there's an actual dig request, you're going to see that. And you may say, that's okay, that's what they're supposed to do, but at least you're aware of it. One of the customers that we're jointly with, they've already prevented 3 unwanted excavations.
Yeah. And just one comment on the upper left side, we're also tracking where these events have happened. So if it's a moving vehicle, we've got a history of where it went along that site. So if somebody's digging in an area and they move to another area and move to another area, we've got a history of where they've been within that site.
That's a good point. So it's got the geotagging. The video is a little bit heavy, so it's probably delayed here, but you can see when they start the engine, when they're dropping the bucket. So there's all kinds of detections that we can do, depending on what you want to sense. And apologize because it's pumping a lot of data through here, but I think you're getting the idea, right? It is all the different activities that we can detect and more. We just listed a few up here that are most pertinent to this audience and to get you thinking broader and bigger. One of the things that we're kind of working on and trying to think about is like a leak, right? So if you've got that, it's moving the ground, if I'm saying it right, Craig, and so we could alert that there's a potential leak, right, based off of the ground movement, and it's moving up to the sense.
Yeah, that's right. If you have a high pressurized line, and if a leak develops in that line, we'll be able to detect it almost immediately, because it'll throw out energy into the ground. So location within a meter to 2 meters.
And there, the other one I should have pointed out, when the guy was hand digging a drone, they had it attached to a drone, so it flew out. So we can integrate to that where if something is sensed based off of that event, the drone would fly out, take a picture, and that would send to our system so you can see what actually is happening with that event, what the location is. So we can tie it to other devices such as cameras and drones as well.
Yeah, and that's particularly useful in long pipelines. So if you're out, 10, 15 miles away, it may not be convenient for cameras, or you may not want to send somebody out there, but a drone can pop up, get the coordinates, head out there quickly, do a preliminary look to see, is it a big problem, and potentially even have recordings on it to say, hey, stop, there's something below you.
That's awesome. So from a software perspective, the TerraSound has detected the event, and then what I'm walking you through here is what it looks like from a data collection and notifying into dispatching. So you can see here all the different use cases that we've tested with. Automatically that's captured. We've dispatched these individuals based off of the event, geographical location, and more importantly, what's linked to that, right? So we know what tickets are in the area, and we want to make sure that that's purview to it. So again, we'll touch on it here in a second. The data that you collect and the activities that you perform is completely up to you and your flow and your process. So this is what a person would see, whether it be a dispatcher. You can work on a tablet, you can work on a phone, but they would see, in this case, right, here's the facility, this red line, here's the actual excavation or event that happened. So if it was something from weather, wherever you tag that event, it would show up. And then down here is where we auto link the ticket. And then what they would do is when they got this information, they would click the ticket and they could say, you know what, this is a valid excavation, or actually, you know, I see heavier equipment. It was supposed to just be a hand dig. I want to dispatch somebody. I want to do a monitoring. So now they can call the excavation company and say, hey, hold up, I want to do a monitoring. Or, you know, the work type is completely different than what they were expecting. Somebody was supposed to be planting a mailbox or putting in a mailbox, and they're doing heavy excavation. So we want to equip the industry with the knowledge to be able to react properly based off of the activity that's occurring. And then the other parts of the software is, again, what do I need to automate? We want to accelerate the efficiency, and more importantly, in these cases, we want to make sure that you can react in real time. So these are just a few examples. It's capturing where the incident's happening, what type of event is it happening, obviously auto linking the ticket. So there's different data that we can auto populate, but it's all about how do I get somebody out there to react? How do I notify them? And that's all happening automatically in real time. And then, you know, we call this intelligent data collection, right? Your process and your workflows are important, and they differ, right, based off of the event. So we put in a few examples, and when we usually call ours these types of managing these events smart apps, because it's cascading. So if I go out and there's been a nick and I click this, you know, yes button, then a whole series of other data collection events have to ensue and be filled out based off of what the actual findings are. So it's important to get alerted. It's so important to potentially stop the event, and then it's equally important to gather all the data of what happened at the event. Did I educate the excavation company or the person? Why didn't they have an 811 ticket? So you're collecting all that data that can feed into your public awareness. Obviously, when you get audited, all those things intertwine. So it's critical not only to capture the event, but how did you react and what happened on site. And then to follow up on that again is you want the ability to manage that real time, and then you want the analytics, right, to follow that up. What's open, who's assigned to, who's in route, right? You configure all those types of things, but at least you have the visibility to forecast, understand where do you need to make changes. We're going to talk about that towards the tail end. When you collect that data, you want to protect now, but you also want to make changes. Do you need to put up a fence, right? What are those things that you need to do because it's a high traffic area to, you know, do you put any more mile markers or facility warnings or whatever those are? You don't know what you don't know. And now we're bringing that to the forefront so that you can actually make, you know, more proactive actions to prevent these things from happening in the first place. Okay. So Chris, Ann, I don't know if you're in the background, but I'm sure it looks like there's a lot of questions. We wanted to make sure we gave a decent amount of time there, but if we can't get to them all, we definitely want to document and have people reach out to us as well. We're happy to answer those.
Sure. And, you know, one of the initial questions we had up front was if the presentation would be posted. And the answer is yes. CGA will be posting a copy of this recording and presentation to commongroundalliance.com. And Earth Solutions will also be posting to their website as well. So we'd encourage you to share that with others. And certainly if you have additional questions after the fact, we can provide email addresses and additional resources for you to get back in touch with folks. So the answer to that initial one for everyone on the call, all 263 of you, is yes, the presentation will be available. First question we have is, what are the usual preventative and corrective procedures and time?
That, if I'm understanding the question right, is really a company procedural thing, right? So if I'm understanding the question is based off of the event type, right? You would determine how fast do I want to dispatch somebody, or do I want somebody to review that before I dispatch? Do I want auto dispatching? If I'm understanding the question right, that's ultimately the customer's decision on how fast and what are the procedures to react. One of the things, as a side note, we're looking at is we want to integrate with the first responders database, right? Because maybe it's a security breach and you want to send out a first responder as opposed to somebody on your technical team. So the answer is it's really up to the customer. What do they want to respond to? What do they want to collect? There's all kinds of other, we call it noise, right? So there might be foot traffic, and in some areas you don't want to detect the foot traffic. Basically what we do is we scrape that out so that you only get alerted for certain events. So it's completely up to the customer of what they want to track and how do they want to react, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point is that, based on the length of your pipeline or underground asset, I'll use an example of a pipeline that we are on right now. In some areas, they're really only interested in heavy digging, so excavation type of work. But in another area, they've got a bunch of valves, and in that area, they're also interested in whether vehicles are coming there or people are walking around there. So we have the capability to set for different segments, and you can segment, however you'd like, different alert types for the different segments of the pipeline. So you can have as many alerts or as few alerts as of those different classifiers for each one of those segments, depending on what is of interest to you in that area.
Got it. And if your question hasn't been answered to the best of the ability that we understood it, please feel free to type in a little bit more detail, and we'll see if we can't get that at 100%. So next question comes, when you do put the fiber in the ground, how deep do you lay your cable?
Yep, so I'll take that one. Generally speaking, you don't need to bury it super deep. We usually bury it somewhere between really ideally anywhere 9 to 18 inches, somewhere in that range is fine. Really what we don't want is for erosion to come and take the top layers away and expose the cable. So long as we're deep enough where that's not going to happen, I think we're in good shape. We've done shallower than that. We've done deeper than that. Each is fine, but generally speaking, that's kind of a good range for us to be in.
Gotcha. Thank you. Next question. What is the laser reach of the Terra box? Life expectancy of cable and box, and in parentheses, does damage to cable impact this? Okay,
so the boxes come in different lengths. The smallest one is 5 kilometers, and the longest one will travel 100 kilometers, so 50 kilometers in either direction. And that would be off of kind of a single source of power at the central location. So maximum of 100 kilometers or as little as 5 kilometers. The second piece, I'm sorry, was about damage to or life expectancy.
Like the box.
Yeah, so life expectancy of the box, that box is very robust. Generally speaking, more than 10 years on the box life. We've got some in service, 7, 8 years old. We've never had problems with them. So the box is very robust. There's really no moving parts inside of it. And then the cable, if a cable break did happen, it's easily repairable. You just cut and splice again. But we'll be able to detect the exact location of any breaks. And we should also be detecting whatever came there and broke it. You'll get a warning before it gets broken to say, hey, someone's digging or something's going on around here. So we'll, before it's ever broken, you'll have warnings that something's coming and hopefully send somebody out to stop it. But if not, it's easily spliced back together.
Yeah, that makes sense. That would be the optimum answer, as our cables never break. Great response there. The next question, Sounds like a very good idea, and I can see this being a best practice for new pipelines that are being laid. But for remote areas where existing pipelines have been there for many years, is TerraSound proposing to make new investment and lay new fiber optics with existing pipes in those areas for technology to be useful?
So I can start off with this. So, what we're finding is, we agree, right? We think eventually this is going to be a best practice. And what most of the customers that we're working with is they're starting with two things. One is, where are my most critical areas? And let's bite that apple first, and let's protect those. The second is you're always installing and you're always repairing. So when you have that exposed, it's easier to go ahead and put the fiber and the technology. So as you're doing construction, we highly recommend you go ahead and lay, right? It's less expensive. It's already exposed. Let's put the fiber down. So there's different ways to address and roll this out so that you don't feel like you have to, ideally you'd want to protect your entire network, but there are areas that you want to start with and focus on. And then as you do new construction or you're exposed, then we would recommend you would lay that. It may not be across your entire network, day one, but over time, right, it's going to serve yourself and the environment to go ahead and lay that when it's opportunistic about it.
Yeah. So start with high consequence areas. Start with areas where you've had trouble in the past.
Damages.
Damages or there's construction going on and you've had issues in the past. Those are the areas we think this is right to start with.
Great, and thank you for that answer, and thank you for the questions. Very thoughtful questions we're getting. Obvious question we have is, when do we receive the luncheon portion of today's presentation? Yes, all Uber Eats gift cards will be distributed electronically via Amazon within the next 24 hours. So be sure to monitor your spam or your junk filters as those are disseminated. So within the next 24 hours, you will receive those. Next question we have, you're welcome, in line with the content today, is there a maximum depth for the fiber installation?
I don't think that there's really a maximum depth. I think the farther you go down, and depending on soil type and rock type, right, it becomes more difficult to go deeper. And if you're looking for something like somebody walking on the surface and you're now, 20, 50 feet down, you're going to lose some of that because there will be dampening of that sound noise. And the honest answer is, I don't think we've ever, had somebody ask us to put it super far down. So, the real answer is it'll still work. But what we can detect may be slightly different. So I think we'd have to do, a use case if there was somebody who wanted it down significantly farther than where we normally put it.
Great. Well, here's the $1 million question, or hopefully not the $1 million question. Just basically, can you share some cost information?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've packaged this solution together. And I think it goes to the one of the other questions of the warranty of the box. So what we propose is we come and we give you the complete solution that includes the box. The other piece that we're working together with some third parties is you can use your own construction firm, your internal firm, lay the fiber. So the answer really becomes is we need to understand, to Craig's point, what type of box you need, how many miles do you need to cover? Is it a perimeter search? Do you need redundancy? Those types of things. So we can't give you an exact answer. It's very competitive, but we basically, based off of your assets and the areas that you want to protect at this level, then we would put together a customized solution and price that out. We don't want to just give you a broad sense because it's not a really good sense of what it could do for you until we understand the complexity of what you want to protect.
And that's a great response, and I'm sure it is based on so many variables. And I'd ask Josh from your team to put in the chat an email address that folks can directly email the appropriate person within your company if they want to set up an additional meeting or get some additional information or more specifics on cost or use case. Josh, if you have info at or sales at, or even your email, put Josh on the spot directly, Josh Fuller with Earth, to make sure that people know how to directly get in touch with you, because these are all really, really good questions and probably could focus a little bit more time on all of them. So Josh is going to put the correct email information up there in the chat so that you can get in touch with the right folks. So
yeah, that would be me.
Okay, Trent, throwing the name out there for all 250 plus folks. So get on his calendar early. We had a question that I asked about the fiber installation. Thanks, so we can clear that one. The next question we had: does the gas transmitting through the pipeline interfere with adequate ground event detection?
Love it.
No, it shouldn't. That would be a kind of a normal background noise that we would see. And it wouldn't really interfere with what we're trying to detect, which would be kind of anomalies that are different than the normal background noise of that system.
I think that's a really good question, a really good point. It goes to what we can detect and what we would consider noise. Again, is you would establish that pattern. Another use case that we ran into is we're getting ready to protect this substation, and they have a really large compressor in there that kicks on every couple hours. There's two things that were really unique about that. One is we can establish that pattern of life of when that's kicking on, and we can ignore it. The second is the vibrations of that. We can actually tell them that compressor is starting to degrade because it's not putting out enough pressure. So that's why we put on their equipment failures. Like we've done things with around power, so you can hear, because it's putting vibrations in the ground from electric. So there's probably hundreds of different use cases that we haven't even thought of. But once you capture that pattern of life, you've got that data now. Now you can sense it. So it's just kind of endless to add on to that. But it could be noise, right, that we can filter out, or it could be a use case you really want to capture.
Interesting. I was very curious when I was watching your video how you actually, we're in the correct time and place to have use case on an earthquake. I thought that was pretty interesting. So I do know we have a lot of folks over on this call today from the California side. So definitely tried and true here. Next question we have: if I am excavating in an area your fiber is installed, will 811 be able to notify a locator? Also, how is it locatable?
That's a good question. Our purview, and Christine, you may have some input on this too, is it's going to be over the asset. So your asset, you're already registered at the one call center of this is by Polygon, this is where I'm at. So, you already have asset on top of asset, so you shouldn't have to do anything differently there. Obviously they would know that you've also got a fiber on top of that asset, but I think it's a really good question. But we wouldn't anticipate that you'd have to register that, but they would at least be notified that does have that sensing on top of it. But really good question.
Yeah, if there's any locators on the call today that actually locate fiber, you're welcome to throw some comments in the chat there to help facilitate and stimulate some additional conversation. So next question we had: are customers indicating that fiber is also installed when locating their gas facilities are being protected? So kind of modeled after the last question, kind of a twofer.
Yeah, so read that again.
Are customers indicating that fiber is also installed when locating their other gas facilities?
I think it's the same question of, right, do you have to locate, right? The ideal answer is right, you would do the same thing. It would, since you already have your asset there, there's a certain amount of precautions that you would take. Obviously, you would already know. And then part of what our software can do now, combined with their technology, is when we do positive response to the excavator, whether that's one call, email, fax, text or voice, we could automatically send out and say, hey, there's a fiber sensing on top of that at this depth. That's probably how we would handle it so that they know. And when you go to excavate, it's a proper excavation. And also on top of that is a fiber sensing at this depth. That's how we handle that.
Okay. Next question we have, is your analytics post-data collection used to then improve your model for quantitative risk prioritization or up to the customer?
Great question. So the answer is absolutely yes. We already do pretty heavy risk modeling right now, so we can detect, we do damage risk analysis, right? How often you've been damaged, whether it's near miss, contract locator versus internal locator versus third-party locator, excavator. We weight all that and give a score to a ticket to tell you the propensity of whether it's risk to be damaged or not. This data is absolutely going to be used, right? So we're looking at, what data was collected there, what the asset type is, what's the propensity of damage, and then we're going to throw other layers like weather and occupancy. So we're adding data to increase what the propensity of risk. That's going to be absolutely a piece of how we continue to model out our risk.
Great, great. Not so much a question, but more of a comment. Is it just me, or does it look like Trent and Craig are piloting the Millennium Falcon right now, the way they are?
Well, as you know, I came to, this is a TerraSound building.
Who's Chewbacca? That's what I want to know.
Not me. but we came here, we're trying to use they have a great camera. For some reason, the adapter wasn't working right, so we had to switch, and you just put our camera way out here. But yeah, it does look like we're in some sort of work accident. Love the comment.
I do want to thank everybody for their questions and comments. And as we wind down today, CGA has launched the new Next Practices initiatives, which is looking at innovative futuristic technology. And it's going to be a big part of the conference come October. So as we look at the time between June and October, which will fly by in a minute, do you anticipate having more case study data available, or perhaps one of your clients that would be willing to share their experience and use case?
We do, right? We encourage everybody to come out, and certainly to the CGA for obvious reasons. Craig and his team are going out there. We're going to try to set up some simulations. We'd love to have a customer speak on our behalf as well. But that's our current plan for sure. And as you know, we're doing our user group the day before, so it'll be a full week of conversations and use cases. So we're happy to do all that.
Great. And we did have another question pop up here. Does the sensing fiber interfere with any cathodic protection that may be in place?
Great question.
Yeah, so no, it doesn't. It's just a standard fiber optic cable, so it's inert. And a lot of times, the best if you want to hear, even what's kind of going on inside the pipe, is to actually attach these to the pipeline. And that is also a possibility if you're doing new pipes, is to kind of couple these, and that has been done in the past. It does not interfere with any cathodic protection.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we have run. No, we haven't. So is this only available to install when our facility is being installed? Example, our facility may be 4 feet below the ground. Do you need to go the depth of the facility, or on existing lines, do you simply go the few inches down?
Yeah, and that's really up to the customer. But I think if it's an existing line, it's easiest just to go, the 9 to 18 inches into the ground, and then you're going to be getting the capability to, again, hear kind of what's going on above. So is somebody coming to excavate, or hand dig on it or any other issues that you're interested in hearing. And that's just fine for those cases.
Excellent. And let me scroll down here. I got another question that came in. Does this also work with over the surface lines as well, or does it have to be underground?
It's a good question. We can, and in fact, there is technology that we have that can actually paint these down on roadways, or paint them down over, if there's a right of way going, instead of having to send a borehole, you could paint these on top, and those work fine. We prefer for it to be coupled into the ground. If it's kind of just loose on top, your signal gets a bit degraded. Because you're losing contact points. But it is possible to have it on the surface as well.
Okay, here's another question. Can you expand a wee bit on leak detection?
Yeah, sure. Basically, when the line is in the ground on pressurized lines, most of these are pressurized to 700, 900 psi, those types of high pressures. When a leak starts to occur, there is energy released into the ground, even at a very small leak. There's a lot of energy being released into the ground. That causes, that energy in that pattern is unique, and we can detect that within 1 to 2 meters of where on that line it's happening, even if it's underground. So it's similar to, I guess, a footstep is putting energy from the top down. This is putting energy from the kind of underground up. It doesn't matter for us where that energy is coming. We're able to detect it.
Okay, great. We've got 2 final questions here before we end today's lunch and learn, but is this susceptible to lightning and ground strikes?
The box certainly is, but the fiber optic cable is no more susceptible than anything else. It's just an inert fiber optic cable. If something were to hit the box area and it was unprotected, then yes, we might have a problem on the box, but not on the cabling in the ground, no.
One more question we'll have, and then the rest of the questions in the chat, we'll keep those and send them for further review. Does this tech work with facilities underwater, i.e. floods?
So we've done testing on our land that goes underneath streams. We have installs that are in marsh lands, which are semi-flooded at times. It doesn't make a big difference for us. It's still detecting whatever energy is there. You may lose distance if you're, again, looking to hear footprints at 50 feet or 100 feet. You may not hear it at that distance, but certainly as you're approaching the line, we're still going to detect it.
Awesome. Well, Trent and Craig, on behalf of CGA and the more than 270 folks that joined us for our virtual lunch today, I want to thank you for sharing all of this great information. We've captured the chat and the information. I want to encourage everybody to stay tuned for additional information on our lunch and learns at cgaconference.com. But also make sure to follow both Earth and CGA on LinkedIn, and stay safe, stay healthy. We look forward to seeing you all at the 2021 CGA Conference and Expo, October 12th through the 15th, 2021 in sunny Orlando, Florida, where we carry on conversations just like these. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.